Hello, I'd like to say good evening, good morning, good afternoon to all of my many friends, also to my many enemies. Once again, this is another episode of Roosevelt Sounds Off. And on this evening, this morning, this afternoon, whenever you happen to be watching this, it is Tuesday evening. Hopefully I have this video up, this evening as soon as I get done with this. But I wanted to talk about a topic that is trending. I want to talk about the victims of Hurricane Harvey down in Houston, Texas, and a certain pastor. Oh yeah, you all should know him very, very well. Pastor Joel Olsteen, who is the pastor of Lakewood Church in Houston, Texas. Now, Lakewood Church is, the fact they call it a church, I use that word very, very loosely, but it's the largest so-called church that's in the country. Okay, and I think it holds like 18,000 people. And as many of you all know, that Hurricane Harvey has slammed into Houston, Texas this past weekend, and there were many people who have lost their homes, who have lost every single thing that they've owned. It's been, the whole city is completely flooded out. They had to bring in boats and everything to rescue some people. And yesterday I hear that there's a family of 6 that drowned. Doesn't make any kind of sense and everything to me. This is crazy. And, in the midst of it all, in the midst of all of this craziness, you have this church, the Lakewood Church, and Pastor Joel Osteen. He absolutely refused this weekend to open his doors to help these people. And I think that this is just bad. So I'm going to give you my take on it, and I'm going to even give you a take of what a friend of mine was telling me before I started, doing this video. One of my good friends who I spoke to, about this subject before I started doing this video. I think that this is something that's bad, and the update to it is, even though he didn't open the doors of the church this weekend, but him and his wife said that we are praying for the victims of, Hurricane Harvey. And he tweeted out a tweet the next day, said that God got this. All kinds of crap like this. But my mind and my memory brings me, and I'm going to be paraphrasing some, to the book of James in the New Testament, one of the Gospels, where it actually says that if you tell a person to be warmed and to be filled, but yet you don't give them a place to lay their head, and you don't give them food or anything that's useful to the body, what does it profit? So a lot of people begin to get on Facebook and begin to get on Twitter, even on YouTube, and actually slam Joel Osteen for not opening up the doors to help the victims of Hurricane Harvey. So the update is, I found out this afternoon, the update is that they are preparing to open the doors of the church. And they said right now they're bringing in like air mattresses and stuff for people to sleep and everything. But why did it have to take people talking about it on Facebook and on Twitter for him to do this? It seemed to me as something that he was just shamed into doing it. Because, he has like one of the biggest churches in the city. So to me, he should have been the first to do it. But of course, he was even trying to fight it. Still trying to talk about, well, I want to make sure all the other shelters are filled up first before we open the doors of the church. No, the doors of the church should have been open before the shelters. Because in the midst of all of this tragedy, in the midst of all of this chaos, in the midst of all of this mess that's going on, where are all the pastors? Where was Joel Osteen? Where is even Bishop Ivy Hilliard, who also has a big church in Houston? And even someone like T.D. Jakes, even though I know Potter's House is based in Dallas, but the amount and the money that these preachers have, they could get together and do something. To me, these churches, a whole lot of these mega churches, they should do much more for the community than what it is that they do. So a friend of mine, she got on my case a little bit because she told me sometime I get so, as she puts it, emotional, and I run off of whatever a whole lot of other people are saying, and sometimes I don't take the time to see the other side. And she says that legally, from what she told me, that, you know, whether it's a church, no matter what it is, that you have to be designated as a shelter. You know, and some other things that, you know, she said that you don't know the condition of the church could be flooded and this and that. But that is not true, because I saw a video on Facebook this morning that somebody took that walked all around the church and stuff, because it has glass windows and glass doors, and there was no water whatsoever in the church. Now, there might be a little bit of water like on the outside, but the church as a whole is, you know, dry. So how come a church like this, you know, who rakes in, even though he might not talk necessarily all the time about money, like, you know, T.D. Jakes and Creflo Dollar and, you know, some of the rest of them, but the ministry of Joel Osteen is rolling in money. They collect thousands every single week. I mean, they have like 5 to 6 services a weekend, with 2 being Spanish speaking. So, I mean, it seems like to me that a whole lot of these preachers, especially these false prophets, the only thing that they're caring about is just basically their own belly. Just basically, as long as that they could walk around in $1,000 suits and drive around in $100,000 vehicles, and Joel Osteen himself lives in a $10 million home, and you know, and their wife has on like some of the best stuff and the best makeup, they could care less about you, as long as they're being fulfilled. Because a whole lot of times you will see these preachers all of the time dressed up in stuff and, you know, have the best and look the best, driving around in the best. And some of the people who support these people every single week doing their services, their followers, could be just like living in a shelter or just living any place that is be in a bad condition, and they can have people among them every single Sunday that might need to eat. But even if you do, these people will not drop a dime in your lap. They could care less. So I told her that I could take into consideration that maybe you need to be designated as a shelter and and blah, 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 this, blah, blah, all of that. But I feel that he could have done more before now. Why is he waiting until now, when a whole lot of people have talked about him on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, like I'm talking about him on YouTube, Pastor Joel Osteen, to open the doors of his church when he should have been the first to do it? He saw that Hurricane Harvey was out there. He knew that people were being stranded. He knew that people were made homeless. He knew that families and stuff were drowning. I could see it that if he was off somewhere and buried under a car or under a rock or off in some type of African bush someplace and, you know, didn't hear about anything, didn't know anything, but he did know. And this is precisely, I feel, why some people do not do church. Because it does say in the book of James, like I just quoted to you, that if you just tell a person to be warmed and filled, but yet you don't give them what is useful to the body, what profits you. So it shows the nature of a false prophet is in the book. Nothing but just a false prophet who wants to tell people good things every single week. He never preaches against sin. Never talks about heaven and hell. You know, the kind of life that we have to leave, or that we're going to in the afterlife whenever we leave here. Doesn't talk about salvation. Only cares about the fact whether you live good in life, whether you have a high self-esteem, and all of this other kind of I mean, to me, if I'm a preacher, I could care less about whether you feel good about yourself, whether you get a good job, whether you drive a nice car, whether you live in a big house, whether you're successful in life. Because my job as a pastor is to point you to Jesus the Savior. But Joel Osteen and some of the others are not doing this with this prosperity ministry. And it seems like whenever they do things, it's all out of shaming, or all people, somebody has to shame them, so then they have to do stuff out of manners, which really doesn't come from the heart anyway, so that means God is not honoring it either way. Or either it's for some type of PR move. What I mean by that is that even 12 years ago during Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, I'm pretty sure many of you will remember that, that many of the preachers, when the flood waters were rising, some of the people, you know, you had a whole lot of people who drowned and died during Hurricane Katrina. And some of these people were found floating and stuff in the water. But yet there's this guy, he has a website called pimppreacher.com. And I guess he was down there during that time, and they came across some of these members of some of these churches who down in New Orleans who died. But let me get back to the preachers of New Orleans. What a whole lot of them did was, when the floodwaters were rising, the preachers packed up everything, like all their fancy suits, and had their fancy cars and Bentleys and Rolls Royces shipped someplace else. So a whole lot of preachers left town, even though they knew what was going on. So some of the members of these churches in New Orleans died, and you know, some of these people were in the morgue, and they would call, they found out that certain people who died were members of certain churches, so they would call these pastors, wherever they were, and, you know, the guy would tell them something, well, you know, we have a member of yours who drowned during Hurricane Katrina, and the family would like to have you come back to do the, you know, funeral. And a whole lot of these preachers said that they couldn't do it. They just didn't have time. They didn't have time. They was too tied up doing something else. A bunch of lying false prophets. But yet, when George W. Bush, at the time, who was president, along with T.D. Jakes, came down to New Orleans to do a proposal or whatever it was during the hurricane, all of a sudden, all of these preachers now who didn't have time to deal with their dead members who died in the hurricane, all of a sudden came back just to appear on the stage with President Bush and T.D. Jakes. This guy said that he got so disgusted, he actually threw his Bible in the garbage, and I really do not blame him. But yet a whole lot of people wonder how come many people, when they see all of this kind of crap, don't want to do church, and how many others who do want to turn to some kind of religion, they might turn to Islam or Black Hebrew Israelite, because they've seen too much or too many of the games that preachers play. They want to drive around in nice cars and walk around in these big fur coats so they can look like a bear, and he's up there wearing his rings and sitting at home drinking his wine and eating his steak, and the only thing you got is nothing but beans and cornbread. People are not going for that kind of stuff anymore. I said it in one of my last videos. A church, especially a mega church, needs to serve the community that it is in. And that's how come many people are very hard on many of these mega churches, because mega churches do not do their fair share. We have 3 or 4 major mega churches here in the Chicago area, but they're not doing their fair share, because if they were doing their fair share, Chicago would not have a homeless problem. The city of Atlanta, Georgia has 3 or 4 major mega churches. If these mega churches were really doing what they're supposed to be doing and giving their fair share, Atlanta would not have a homeless problem. Look at all the mega churches all over Texas. If these mega churches were doing their fair share, Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, Corpus Christi, Osteen, none of these places would have a homeless issue. Mega churches do not do what they're supposed to be doing. And basically, I mean, it's a whole lot of these preachers have turned religion into a con and into a front. And the only thing they want to do is just beg for bigger offerings and have these stupid lines, $1,000 line, $500 line, $100 line. But what are they doing? Why, so the pastor can drive around in a Rolls Royce and you could be still left with nothing? Maybe Malcolm X said it the best way. That whenever they collected money for the Nation of Islam back in the day, they said that they used that money to build businesses in the black community. They said, we use this money to build businesses for you, but the black church, only thing the black church employs and makes rich is preachers. And I'm believing that that's true. Because it's all about him. It's all about the personality of the preacher. They could care less about you. In the way that Pastor Joel Osteen has acted, this has completely shown his true colors. Nothing but a false prophet. The nature of the false prophet is in the book. If a preacher comes to you and says we're only offering prayers but not doing anything, we're only telling you to be filled and warmed but not giving you what is useful to the body, that is a false prophet. The nature of a false prophet is in the book, my people. Look it up. So right now, that's exactly where I'm going to leave it. And if anybody liked this video, be sure to give me a thumbs up. I greatly appreciate it. And to subscribe to the next video. Peace and blessings to all.